Good. All right. Hey, good morning, everybody. Come on in, find your seat if you haven't got a seat yet. Thanks for being here on this cold, cold morning. I almost didn't come, so that'd have been, just kidding. No, but welcome. This is week 8. We are talking about some tech tips and alternatives today. I'm excited for today. You guys will get to hear from a few different people about what they do, how they use tech, or what they do instead of tech, and we'll get to that. But over the past couple of months, we've discussed the role of technology in our lives. Today, we hope to be able to offer some more practical tips and alternatives that will help us manage its influence on us and our families. Take a look at this statistic I found here. Should be in your notes. Considering a recent survey that showed American adults spend up to 3 hours a day on social media, you may be disheartened to learn that the average family spends just a fraction of that time together each day. A new survey calculated that Americans are enjoying just 37 minutes of quality time as a family on weekends. So, back first couple of weeks, we talked about media and what it means, and I think it's lived up to its name, right? What does media mean? Anybody remember? Middle, right? It means middle. It's come between us in a lot of different ways, and between us and our families to our detriment. And so technology comes with a powerful draw, right? We've talked about that as well, how, you almost have to use technology to some degree to function in society today. It's almost required. It's innate in the default settings of our easy everywhere culture. Its ubiquitous presence and unavoidable pull is undeniable in our lives, right? Because technology is devoted primarily to making our lives easier, right? That's usually the claim. It makes things easier for us. It discourages us from disciplines, especially ones that involve breaking free from its wireless grasp, okay? So technology is used in a way that it says it makes our life easier, and it makes it easier for us to, communicate with our friends and family. It makes it easier for us to get some knowledge, but it also makes it pretty easy to get distracted, right? You get sucked into playing some game, you get sucked into some YouTube rabbit hole, and you waste time, you waste energy. You're training your brain for that type of media. We talked about that a lot in weeks past, and you'll see, and that's because of its effect on our brains. That's the main reason that we're looking at some alternatives today to try to break that effect, or to strengthen other areas of our brains that technology has weakened from overuse. So through the tips we offer today, along with the alternatives we'll recommend, we hope to loosen that grasp of tech that it has on your lives and your family. Okay? So I believe, heading into the tech tips section, I'm moving quickly just because we're going to hear from several folks today, but under the tech tips, I believe that generally less exposure and more control is better when it comes to tech in your kids' lives. So just as a general rule, if you can hold off on screen time, any form of it, that's better. If you can limit their use, that's better. So generally, I believe that's the case. And so what we wanted to do today is we've been talking about parental controls and you being involved with your kids and their tech use. And so what we're going to do today is we're going to hear from a couple of fellas that I believe do a good job of keeping tabs on their kids' tech use and using the parental controls. So I've asked Andrew Ireland and Wayne Steed to share how to set up parental controls. So maybe technology is new to you, it's scary, you don't even know where to start. These are going to be the starting places, okay? So they're going to walk through that and even share just a little bit about how they manage technology and media in their families. And so I'm going to have Andy come on up first. So Andy's going to walk through how to set those up. If you want to pull your phones out, Mom and Dad, and you can even, get familiar if you haven't set this up yet. He's going to walk through how to do it on Android or a Google device, and Wayne will walk through how to do it on an iPhone or I suppose any iDevice, huh? But yeah. All right. So Andy's going to go first, and then Wayne, you can just come on up whenever he's done.
Thanks, Greg.
Thank you.
All right. So I'm going to start with Android going to kind of run it through real quick just to give you an idea of what it can do, but certainly I think Wayne would say the same. We can help you maybe answer some questions afterwards, specifics, because it's going to be up there. It might be a little hard to see. But basically with Android, it's something called Family Link or Google Family Link. That's the icon you're looking for because you can do this, you can control this from your Android device or your iOS device. Your child's device would be the Android. So if you have iPhones for your whole family, just wait 10 minutes. So, but it has several functions. We'll just go over the functions real quick. It's going to limit the screen time per day. That's probably the most useful function of it. But then it also locks a device during bedtime hours, and I'll show you a picture of that in just a second. But we talked about like taking their phone out of the room at night to make sure that they're not, texting or talking late at night or doing things maybe when there's not supervision. This will give you a technology way to do that. You should still be monitoring. You should still, if you feel you should take it out of the room and no phones in the room, then no phones in the room. But this will basically brick the device overnight. You set their bedtime hours. It'll restrict app usage and installing apps, what they can use and what they can install. It'll give you a way to monitor how your child is spending their time on the device. It'll enforce something called Google Safe Search in Chrome, so it'll try to give them a clean web experience, but it will say it will try. There's no guarantee. It'll give you the location of your child's device, so if you don't want to use like a paid service to always be able to pull your kid up on a map, this will let you do it. And then when they lose their phone in your house, today, tomorrow, and the day after, you can force it to override the settings and play a sound. Or you can do that when they won't answer their phone. You can keep playing the sound until they answer their phone. And it'll also limit their the admin functions of the device. It'll kind of lock them into almost like a kid's mode. So you might be wondering what it costs. Same as the other one, it's going to be free. It's free, but you do need 2 devices. And again, this is based off of if your kid's device is Android, this is for you. Even if you have an iPhone, that's fine. But you need 2 devices, a parent device and a child device, obviously, to control it. So the setup basically follows this function, and it is actually pretty easy. You install the Family Link app on your device, whether it's iOS or your phone or whatever, your Android phone, and then it'll just walk you through step by step by step. And I didn't take screenshots of all the steps because that'd be a lot of screenshots, and I just want to give you a quick overview. So it does ask you for your credit card number. It will ask for that. It will not charge it, but it'll run an authorization against it basically to determine that you are in fact an adult, because kids typically don't have credit cards. If they do, that's a different class we offer called Financial Peace University. Next quarter, there you go. So you have your Google account, your Gmail account. If you don't have one, you'll have to set it up. It's free, whatever. You'll have to put in a credit card number just to verify that you are in fact an adult. But then it'll guide you through creating their Google account. And you can use their real birthday. Craig just mentioned about limiting exposure early on. You could create a Google account, a child's Google account for your 2-year-old if you wanted to. I would not recommend that, but you could. You put the real birthday, real information in there, and then when they turn 13, you can make it a full-fledged one, or you can keep them in this ecosystem. Just because they turn 13 doesn't mean that they're out and they're a full adult. And then when they turn 18, they are a full adult, and they just take it over. So if you're worried about what their email address is going to be for the rest of their life, you can get them a good one now. So not really a concern. But those prompts will just guide you through setting up the child's device. So if you're wondering, whether you're on Android or iOS, just look for, the installation page. Just look for Google Family Link and see that little kite. That's the icon you're looking for. So just to run you through a couple of the settings and assuming that you followed all the prompts, it literally will next, tell you exactly what to do. But taking a look at the first time, you can limit their screen time. So you can see, there we go. Okay, this is the daily limit page. This is in my app. And I can set a 2-hour time limit on each day. Or if I wanted to be generous, which I'm not, I could say Saturday, I could just uncheck that, and you'd have all 24 hours. But you can see there's a 2-hour time limit each day. But the other thing is bedtime. And this is the thing I was talking about as far as getting the device out of your kid's room. For some reason, that's just not possible. You should still do it. But if it's just not possible, you can set a bedtime, and you can see the phone shuts off every night at 8 p.m., except for Wednesday because we like to stay late in the bridge room, and we're there talking very late. We usually don't leave till after 9. And it shuts off at that time, and then it turns back on at that time. So basically, the phone is a brick. You can set it up so they can still make emergency calls. Like last night, Kepler spent the night at somebody's house. He could still make an emergency call even though his phone is shut off. So that's the bedtime. And then there's, in the Play Store where you're downloading apps and stuff, you can set certain restrictions. You can see I have this phone set up, require approval for all content. So anything she wants to install, I get an alert. She requests it, I get an alert on my phone, or Tara's phone, because we're both parents, we both control it, and we have to approve it. So she can't install anything without our approval. Now, you could set that to different ratings if you want to say, well, if it's a kid game, that's fine, whatever. You know, we just have it on this example on all content. And then the content inside of the apps, like movies, TVs, books, apps, and games, those are what she's able to access inside of those apps. Now, it's different for each app. This is just a quick overview, but it gives you control over what they can install and then what they can access with it. So, and then which one's next? The more app restrictions? Yeah, okay, so certain Google apps. This is not every app. These are just the Google apps, but you can set individual content restrictions on what they're able to access on this stuff or just flat out block it. I'm not going to go into each one of those. We don't have time. But just know that you could set the main Google apps, what they can and can't do, whether they can even access it. So, okay, should be, yep. Okay, so now this is all the apps that might be installed on the phone, okay, after I've approved them for install. But you can see it just picks up what's installed on the phone, like the voicemail app, YouTube, stuff like that. So you can see recently, I just completely blocked the ability to access YouTube and YouTube Kids, okay? So this is where you go in and you can set individual app time limits or just block them. So you can see the Bible right there. I've clicked on this and I've said no limit because, hey, you can read your Bible as much as you want. That's fine, okay? But this isn't the best example, but you know, I could do this water sort color puzzle game. I could say you can play that game for 30 minutes a day. You know, but this app, you can play unlimited, you can do all that. This falls inside of that entire screen time thing. If you go over your screen time, you go over your screen time. However, believe the way we have this set up, correct me if I'm wrong, that lets this one still work even when she's out of time for the day? No? Okay. Well, that's bedtime. Okay. Always allow. That's the set. Sorry, that's what I was looking for. Always allow. So I can say, hey, if you've used your 2-hour limit for the day on all your apps, I can still let you read your Bible. So that's what those different options do. No limit, always allow, set a limit, or just block the app. So we'll go to the next one here. Then this one's going to be a monitoring of the time. And, you know, we can see maybe Saturday got a little out of control. I don't remember which Saturday that was, but we didn't set a limit. You know, so it was out of control. But you can see, look, so far today, she spent 22 minutes reading her Bible, 20 minutes listening to music, and nothing on Chrome. And you can just scroll down. It'll list all the apps. So it'll give you an idea of what they're spending their time on. This is the monitoring function. You can see so far, that was Wednesday, January 19th. She was on her phone 43 minutes when I took this. So, and I'm not going to say I didn't cherry pick the day to make sure the Bible app was on top. Okay, we'll go to the next one. So the next one, this is just inside of Google Chrome. So this is the web experience. I can allow all sites, and this is where I said I can try to block explicit sites, and it'll explain exactly what it's doing there. I can manage sites when I'm trying to block explicit. I can also go in and explicitly add this site is not allowed or this site is allowed. That would be under there. Or I can set it to only approved sites, so that's like a safe listing. Like, you can't go to anything unless I explicitly type it in and allow it. So you can get a good bit of restriction on the web there through the device, because this is only on their Android device, their phone, their tablet, whatever. And then I think we got one more. Yeah, and this is that location service. So you can see here, that'll give me, I know you can't really tell on that map, but when you click on it, it comes up big and you can see where their phone last connected. It just needs data. So one thing we run into is, well, y'all run into is your kid's device, if they have one, going over their data limit. So you try to turn the data off. Well, this needs data to update. So that can be a problem if they're not connected to the internet. But it'll tell me where the phone last was. And then this is where I can, if for whatever reason, you need to just lock the phone right now, even though it's not bedtime and they're not over their limit, you can just hit lock. Maybe they're not listening, so you can just hit lock to get their head up, and then you can talk to them. But you can see Casey actually has 2 devices. She has a phone, and she has a tablet. So all these rules apply to both of those devices, and I can lock them. And I think if on this screen, if I would have scrolled down, it's where I play the sound. But that's basically a very quick run-through of what it does. But like I said, if you got questions, I'd be more than happy to try and answer them. So,
does that change the slides, or are they doing that?
No, they're doing that.
Oh, they're doing that. If you want it. All right. Well, I might have to guide you through when to flip them because I've got many like Andy. Okay, so this is iOS or iPadOS devices. What you're going to find is a lot of these are very, very similar, but they're not the same. And if you're a non-techie, I know how frustrating it can be to have so many different devices, trying to understand each kind of device and each kind of operating system, how each one goes. But I guess if I can give any kind of tip on any of this stuff, my rule for myself is if I'm not willing as a parent to take the time to learn how to manage it, then I really shouldn't let them have that device, right? Because we know pretty much every device these days. I guess Mike found one that's not capable of getting on the internet, but you have to work really hard to find something that is not capable of doing anything. So if you don't spend the time, if you're a non-techie, find Andy, find me, find Mike Warner, find Craig, there's a lot of people that are techie that can help you. Chris Tyler back there. I mean, there's a lot of people that get into this stuff and would love to spend time with you. Do that because it's worth the investment of the time, because these tools, I'm sure, as we've heard many times during this, however many weeks this is, it's there to help us train our children up, right? And so it's okay to let them have devices, in my opinion, but we have to help them, and they're not going to be perfect, and you're not going to be perfect, but this is to help you to navigate those things. So, all right, I just got down through all of that stuff. So we're going to quickly go through this. Again, this is iPadOS or iOS. They're essentially the same thing as far as these setups go. And if you get lost, don't worry, you can talk to one of us. So second slide, we're going to set up family sharing first in iOS, and it's a lot like that family link that, like I said, this is like, potato. But this lets you individualize each person's account. There's a lot of people I've talked to. If you're an old iOS person, you've had your phone since the first iPhone, you may or may not have just set up one iCloud address or whatever it was back in the day. It wasn't even iCloud. And maybe all of your devices are on that same email. Don't do that. You should take the time, as much as it pains you, and you should split it up to individualized accounts. It helps with accountability and you being able to control and set up each device. So do this first. Okay, slide 3 is just a walkthrough, and we won't go down through all these things, but when you go to settings, you're going to tap on your name, you'll go to family sharing, okay, and then you're going to follow all of the steps that they have. It's very intuitive. It walks you through it. The next slide. You'll create, like I said, the Apple ID, and then you're going to have them join a family. This is where if you're not a non-techie, you might get a little like cross-eyed, and somebody might need to help you. This is where you need your device and their device. Everybody tries to keep it privatized and somehow give children more authority than I feel like they should have, where they have to consent to you having control of their device. My recommendation is just take their device, because it is yours, you're the parent, and just have their device next to your device, and you will consent on theirs as you're setting it up on yours, okay? So anyways, that's a really good rule. So you just walk through all of those, and then the next slide, we're going to go to screen time. So once you've set up your account, you probably already had yours set up their accounts. If you're like me and you have 1 million kids in your family, it'll take more time. Just be patient. Take some vacation time. You'll get it done. But once you get that set, then you're going to screen time, and then for each individual, you're going to have a list. So on the right-hand side, it's kind of blurry, sorry, but you see under family, we have Alex Schlitka, and so that's not my child. I just stole this from the web. And so you're going to go through, and each family member is going to be listed there that you accepted, and you'll go through each one and set that up. So one feature that I really like, you probably saw this on Andy's, when it comes to like web control, we'll get down to it in a second, but you can set it up to where they only have access to the explicit things that you want them to have. Sometimes it's a little too much to just say, hey, I trust you, Apple. I trust you, Google. Just block those inappropriate things. Well, are you really trusting them to block what you think is inappropriate? I don't know. I wouldn't do that. I don't do that. So they have to ask and request access to things if you set this up properly is one thing I would just say. And so, like, you don't have to have their device with you once you have it set up. You can be wherever, and your phone will have a little pop-up that says, I'll just pick on Kellen. Yeah. So it'll say, Kellen wants access to blah, blah, blah website. And I can just say, deny, right there. I just say no, and it'll put it on that. So, whatever it is, an app or to even update apps. So you can do up to just about anything. You can, what Andy says many times, you can brick their device. In other words, it's only as good as a brick. That's what he means when he says that. It's no good to them, except maybe an alarm clock. So if you allow them to have that. So next slide. You're going to want to go through and go ahead and select the next one. Yeah. You're going to want to go through and review occasionally what they're doing. This is, again, very similar to what you just saw on the Android. It's not way different. It's just a different flavor, the same thing. This, again, is not mine. It's just a shot off of the web. But if you look to the left, you can see that whoever this is used 2 hours and 42 minutes. You can see from 12 a.m. to 12 a.m. to 11:59 p.m. across there where they use their time. You can even tap on those, and it'll individualize and select what happened in that particular hour and just give you a summary under where it says most used. And it'll kind of like zoom in and give you more details, more report, depending on what you're trying to find. If you click on an individual one, like this one, they clicked on Tweetbot, whatever that app is, it must be a game, and you see how it filtered it down, and you can see when they played Tweetbot, and you can see they daily average 1 minute. Today they played 11 minutes, and you can see that it's age rating of 17 plus. I would recommend for children, don't allow them to have that high of a rating. And then when you get over here to the other side, you can see a zoomed out view of notifications. So this is also another helpful thing. Josh talked about this, the phantom buzz in your pocket. If you have notifications turned on, this person got 176 notifications that day, and that is 4:39 p.m. I don't know if that's the same day that they're looking at it, but that's a lot of notifications. So you may want to look at your child's device and say, we need to turn these notifications off. I don't want you looking at your phone that much, things like that. That might help you customize that child's plan because no plan is perfect. You're going to start off at the beginning. You're going to set it all up, and then you're going to go back and look and see how that's working for you. And you're going to talk to your child. That's important. And ask them what they're doing. Ask them to be honest with you and share if they're struggling with things, if there's things that are inappropriate that maybe you missed. You miss things. I've missed things. And you'll be like, oh, man, so you're gonna talk to them about that, and you'll figure that out because nothing is perfect, but the idea is to help you manage it, right? And when all else fails, just block it all. So the next slide. This is, maybe just a list of recommendations of what you might do under the main settings. This is under the iTunes and app purchases. This will allow them to see like the App Store or not. There's a lot of things on the App Store, by the way, if you didn't know that. It's not all rated G. So even looking, and they may not be able to download, but there's all sorts of things on there. You may or may not want them to have that. So they can install apps or not, delete apps or not. Maybe you say you can install whatever you want, but you can't delete it. And then when I come look at your phone, it'll all be there, right? So however you want to do that. In-app purchases, don't let them do that. Always require the password. Those are just things that help you manage it. Okay, go to the next one. These are personalized, or not personalized. These are the default apps that Apple makes, and so you haven't chosen to download these apps. They come with your device, okay? So they've got these separate, and so you can go to these. This is just like Andy had a screen. I didn't even realize they had the same thing for Android, but you can go through and decide if they're allowed to have those Apple apps or not. You can just turn them off, okay? And, you know, I just listed on the left there if you want to sketch those down. Those are ones that I would just question whether they should have them or not. Okay, the younger they are, maybe just say no to all. And then the older they get, maybe you need to coach them and start to give them some latitude to prove themselves as they start to get older. And then the next, communication safety. Okay, so this is just the limited adult websites, or maybe like I do, I always check the Aloud websites only. And then if they need them, they can ask me, and I will either approve or just hit deny. That way, you know, by the way, if you give your child access to Google, Google lets them access to a lot of things. Even if you think you're only giving them access to Google Mail, you may have given them access to a whole lot more than just that. So just be very, very careful when you give them access to browsers, okay? Next. Okay, this is a cool feature. If you're on iOS 15.2 or iPad OS 15.2 or newer, I recommend staying up to date with the latest stuff that's not in beta, because this stuff is great. Like Andy said, this stuff is free. This will, if you go to the next slide, if you turn this on, you also have to, again, take your child's device and turn it on so that it's active. But once you've turned it on, if they have friends or people they don't know that are sending them things that are inappropriate, that second slide there is like what you've probably seen on Facebook before or some other social media where, well, Facebook decides it's too sensitive for you. Well, this is saying they believe that there's nudity on there. So if they believe there's like some sexualized or nude image on there, it'll automatically blur it. And when they click on it, it's going to say, are you sure you want to view this? By the way, if you say yes, your parents are going to know. So, and it's true. And then you would get a notification that they clicked on that. So that's pretty cool. I would recommend doing that. That's a good, helpful thing. Next one. All right. So there's lots of options and features. We're not going to go through them all because we just don't have that much time. Don't feel overwhelmed. We're just blasting through this because we're short on time. But there are a lot of things that are all there for you to help you train your child. Again, that's the frame of mind you really need to have. This is not an autopilot babysitter that's supposed to do everything for you. So don't just set it and forget it. You need to set it. You need to go back, as painful it is as it is, because I know how painful it is to know multiple devices. I really don't want to do that. Don't feel like I have the time, but once I said they were allowed to have it, I've just said yes to going to it and looking at it and checking it, okay? So, or just don't have a lot of kids, and it'll take you less time. So, and then just make sure you keep talking to them about that stuff. That's another big tip that's kind of difficult because you get busy and you're just like, oh man, it's uncomfortable for them, uncomfortable for me, and get past that. Just get over it. Spend time with them, talk to them about what's going on in their life, and you will appreciate that later. So, is that the last slide? Okay, cool.
Thanks, fellas. No one else dressed up for Twin Day like Wayne and I. Handsome fella. But no, so hopefully that just gives you a taste of what you can get into. You know what we'll do is I'll share those slides on the Facebook group. So again, if you're not a member of that Facebook group, make sure you join that. But that way you can walk through that. But also you should be able to find something similar. I'm sure there's YouTube tutorials out there that'll walk you through it step by step. And so make sure you set that up, right? At the very least, you should have some parental controls on. A couple other things I'd recommend is spouses having one another's passwords. Parents should have total access to their kids' devices, all those things, okay? Let me just run through a few more tech tips that I would recommend before we move to the next section. So that'd be a tech budget. So just like anything, whether it's your finances, your calories, whatever, what you do first is you don't change your habits and you just start taking a budget of the amount of technology you use. Now, screen time on the iPhone will do that. I'm sure they're similar for Google, but there's something to you consciously taking inventory of the amount of tech that you use. Don't just rely on that app, but go down, right? Okay, I spent, 45 minutes scrolling through Facebook, right? Not only will you feel guilty, and that's a big motivator, but it just helps you remember just the amount of tech that you're using. So do a tech budget, track it, evaluate your amount of tech time, eliminate some of your tech time, create a re-entry plan. So maybe you're like, I'm just going to delete, all this stuff, and then you slowly begin to add stuff and use it in a healthy way. The next thing is tech breaks, and Josh mentioned this, I think it was last week, but basically using tech 1 hour a day, no tech, 1 hour a day, 1 day a week, 1 week a year. So as far as daily goes, if it's 1 hour, ideally it would be before bed. Studies show you sleep better if you turn off screens an hour before bedtime because of what blue light does to your eyes and your brain. Another good thing is to you wake up before your devices do, and they go to bed before you do. So you wake up, you get your day going, you're on your way before you even reach for your phone, or you put your phone to bed, and then you spend the next hour, reading a book or whatever. But just having that time is key. The other thing I'd recommend is setting times throughout the day when tech is available instead of when tech is not available. Okay, so maybe on a Saturday, maybe tech is only available for your kids from this time to this time, and instead of saying, well, you can't use tech from this time to this time. That way, if they're into something, if they're playing, if they're creating, if they're doing something like that, and tech time comes, and they ideally they got some momentum going, they want to keep playing, keep building, keep creating, whatever. Perfect. Tech time comes and goes, and they missed that window. Too bad. Tech was only available for this amount of time, right after lunch or however you want to do it. So that's just another idea, okay? But also, and the guys mentioned it, keeping screens out of your kids' rooms. So whether that's literally or at least digitally, where it's just nothing but emergency calls, an alarm clock or whatever. Okay, a couple other miscellaneous things I'd recommend is finding digital vegetables versus digital candy. This is some terms I found in studying for this. So identify digital vegetables, which is tech that can have a positive component to it. So again, something truly educational. Just because something claims to be educational does not mean it is actually educational. Versus digital candy, that's recreational, and its only function is to spike dopamine. We talked about that last week. And so that can be so-called educational games as well. So just identify those, and just like a regular diet, eliminate the junk food and supplement the healthy food. All right, create more than you consume. And so this comes to using technology. Help your kids see it as a tool rather than a toy. We spend a lot of time talking about that. But see how they can use technology to create something, to build something, rather than for them to sit there and just scroll through and consume it. Actually, what you'll find if you pay attention to any of the social media influencers, most of them, they don't spend all day scrolling through Instagram. They're spending their time creating content to help other people, for other people to enjoy. So just something to consider there. Use it as a tool rather than a toy. If they're old enough, help them find specific skills or interests that they can share online that can kind of develop their love for that or their interest in it, rather than just doing those pointless TikTok dances that we've heard so much about. Use screens for a purpose and together, rather than using them aimlessly and alone. Okay. So make sure that if tech has a role in your family, it's there to pull you guys together. There's a purpose behind it. So, not all video games are bad. Mario Kart, we'll hear about that. We're going to hear from McMillan's here in a little bit. There's times that you can come together around tech, rather than, again, sitting by yourself in the chair while your kids go do something. You're just aimlessly scrolling through social media. You got to be purposeful and intentional. Okay. There's a ton more that we could talk about. I would recommend talking to some of the guys you heard from today. There's plenty of folks that would like to, suggest some other tips for you. But now let's take a look at the tech alternatives. And so to kick this section off, and then we'll move through the rest of it pretty quickly. I did ask the McMillan family to share a little bit. They're both educators. They do a good job, I believe, in minimizing the effect of technology on their family. So I thought it would be good for us to be able to hear just kind of what life looks like for them. Maybe you can get some inspiration. Maybe you can learn some stuff, and I'm sure they'd be open to conversation and questions afterwards. So if you guys want to come on up, they're going to share a little bit about tech in their family. Thank you, guys.
Good morning. As Craig said, we both teach at Dean Valley. I teach primarily juniors and seniors. I teach social studies. Danielle teaches 8th grade math, and we, by being educators, I guess, I get to see the end result at the end of the line, and Danielle gets to see kind of a bit in the process. And it's quite an education. You see things that are wonderful. You see things done well. You see things not done so well, and you really get. I don't need to really meet the parents oftentimes. I see them. I know them by meeting their children, good and bad. So it really, even before we had children, it's been an education on what do we do and how do we want to craft our world. And our world's a little bit different, for better or for worse. We have 3 children, 10, 8, and 3, all strong-willed individual characters who love technology greatly and would gladly sit in front of a television or a phone all day. So that's been a battle we've chose to fight. But whenever it comes to kind of what we want to do, you can go ahead and flip the next one. Just a little bit of an idea of what we do. And I want to preface, I told Craig my concern was I definitely don't want to say, well, this is the right way. This is what works for us. But we do have TV, but it's not a smart TV. And actually, it's kind of worked out that way. We live out by Tappan Lake, which is kind of an indirect kind of blessing in that regard. Internet capability is very limited, and that's kind of handcuffed us, and it's really probably been a great blessing for our family and for us individually. But with that being limited, we do, and I've discovered, and I had thoughts earlier on, am I handicapping my children by them not having access to technology? I don't want to limit them. And what I found out is they discover that quite well on their own. I get emails regularly at school from my children, my 2nd grader, like, hey, Dad, hey, can we throw baseball tonight? Can we do this or that? Like in the middle of the day, which I don't know how he's really doing that, but he's not limited in terms of understanding how to use technology, for better or for worse. We do, I grew up playing video games. I love video games. But I do, and I've not really progressed since about the time of 2006 or 7. I've kind of fell off the video game wagon myself. So what we've got is basically what they've used, including some things right out of the Stone Age, old school Nintendo, of which they actually love. They love the Wii. The Wii is probably their favorite, old till from 2010-ish. And it's one of those things that we limit. They get to play. They're limited to 15 minutes a day during the week, which we've even talked about. Is that too much? In the regards, we are blessed by living out. We have a lot of we provide them and try to open up avenues between reading, between doing a lot of different things for them to do. There is great value in them being bored. I think sometimes in 2022 we feel we're punishing our kids by them being bored. My purpose is not to entertain my children. And a lot of times the most fun they have is when they have things that would be meaningless. Remember one time they had a cardboard box. And I forget what it was. It was a big cardboard box. And they played with that thing for like weeks. Like they made forts. They made a boat out. I mean, it was just one of those things. On one hand, the boredom really kind of helped them grow in a lot of different ways. We do the DVDs. We do watch movies. I teach a pop culture class, in America in the 20th Century pop culture class. I love movies. I love TV. I love sports. I love a lot of different things. But it's one of those things, I want them to be exposed, but quite honestly, looking at the world in 2022, I don't know if they're going to miss a whole lot, missing out on a lot of modern movies. It's by not having TV, we actually do not have cable. If you would have told me 20 years ago that I wouldn't have cable and wouldn't be losing my mind or not watching sports all the time, which I love to do, I would have probably been quite shocked. But truth be told, by being away from it, I don't miss it. And it's one of those things where it's shock. I have a hard time sitting down and watching a movie now. And I love movies. I've grown a lot from that. But even in terms of the kids, they've grown a lot from that. I want them to be exposed, but quality. And quite honestly, modern is not quality. It's just, the quality's limited. I mean, it truly is. But so I think that's all for that slide.
So, what do we do instead? You know, we got 3 kids, excuse me, and lots of time in our day, especially on these snow days. Some days when things get to be cold and you can't really send them outside. What do you do on those days? And there are a couple of things for our family that are just non-negotiable. And reading is a big part of it. Andy and I are both voracious readers, always have been. So we have modeled that from the beginning. We read to the kids even when they were, you know, still in my belly. You know, we would sit, Andy would read the Grimm's fairy tales. So we don't shy, yeah, terrible things. We've scarred them for life. But we don't shy away from books. You know, usually if the kids want to get us on something, they know we'll spend money on books. But we have an entire library in our house between music and books. And I think, too, a lot of families handicap their kids with reading by limiting yourself to what's on the shelf at Walmart, because we don't really have, you know, a big bookstore like we used to have here locally. We do have a couple of really good bookstores. We have the Bibliophile, which is a new store in downtown Dover. Great family, lots of books available there. The bookstore in Philly has reopened, you know, down from the square they had moved. That's a used bookstore, and just using the library. And even now at 10 and 8, we still read aloud to the kids every day. You know, bedtime is a family deal every day. It's a big deal if one of us misses bedtime. And so, you know, we go through books, you know, we read Shakespeare, we read, you know, the Big Family Bible, we read older books, newer books. I mean, it just, you know, books that are above their level. It's really important for kids to hear you talking and hear what good writing sounds like and hear what language sounds like. And a lot of times that's not the easy reader, just kind of things that you can just pick up at the dollar store. So there's a really good book. I didn't link it here and I forgot to bring it. The Read Aloud Family is a really good book, and you can get a sheet of books. I think Craig even has a bunch of stuff back here on this sheet as well, just about things that you can read to your kids and spending that time. As well as just encouraging independent reading. Our district does a really good job of incentivizing AR, and even if AR didn't exist, you know, that would be something that we would push as well. But learning who your kids are and finding out what interests them. Olivia, our oldest, she's going to pick up anything and she's going to read it. Aiden is a little more honed in and he doesn't want to venture on his own. So we have to find things like, hey, buddy, you really liked that book. I think you'd like this too. This is similar. And we have to try and guide him in that direction. But then once he gets into it, you know, he finds it, you know, he loves it and then starts, you know, doing things on his own. So we also have recently found, we love daily calendars, which is so strange. Andy had gotten me a Jeopardy. One of the things that we miss with TV, we have no subscription services, nothing. So we don't access any YouTube, you know, Amazon, any of that stuff on a daily basis. But he had gotten me, we miss Jeopardy. We used to always compete against each other in Jeopardy when that was on. So he had gotten me a daily calendar for Christmas one year that had all the different Jeopardy questions, and the kids loved it. So this year, like, each of the kids got their own calendar, you know, like Aiden's is sports, it's baseball trivia, and Olivia's, you know, 1,000 places to see before you die with, like, you know, these cool places and pictures and stuff, but just things that interest them individually, that gets them engaged with something every day. They each have their devotionals. We're trying to find, you know, kind of the family time. They see us do our stuff, but we're trying to, you know, get to the point now where we're doing that together as a family. So that's a new, just as they age up, something that we're working on. We do a lot of podcasts when we're in the car, and that's something that, for us, Andy does a lot more of the hauling of kids than I do, just the way things work out. But, you know, car time is undivided attention with our kids, and that communication that happens in the car. And so sometimes, you know, we're talking and, you know, dealing with the day and going through all that stuff because we travel a good bit. But sometimes it's okay. When we need something, it's either music or it's a story. You know, they love the Stories podcast. You know, that's a really good one. There's several others out there, but they even like things like scary stories and just like weird little things like Cabinet of Curiosities. They love, just little things to learn about, throughout our history. So sometimes you do have to be a little careful because there can be some themes, especially in public radio broadcasting. There can be some themes that you kind of have to, I guess, check first. But for the most part, they're pretty good. So the other thing that's really non-negotiable in our house is music. Neither one of us were forced to play music as a kid, and we wish we had been. So I play a little bit of piano. He plays a little bit of guitar, not worth writing home about. But for our kids, piano lessons are non-negotiable right now. Like, so they do that every week, and they play every day, for a set amount of time. So those things that they do on that previous slide between playing, their 15 minutes of Wii, or Olivia likes to do some designing on the iPad, or they like to play Minecraft. Those things don't happen. You don't get your 15 minutes unless your chores are done, unless you've played your piano, unless you've done your reading. Those are just the things that have to happen first before you get to have that other time. And if you don't get that time, you don't get that time. It doesn't happen after 7 o'clock. We start for bedtime about 7:30, in bed about 8 o'clock, and if you don't get those things done by 7 o'clock, then you just miss your time for the day, and that's no big deal. You'll get it next time. Well, it can be a big deal, but, from our perspective, it's like, yeah, well, sorry, it's just the way it goes. But they understand. They're to the point now where they understand, we're doing it for a reason. You see your friends, they struggle when they're on the bus, and, kids have Chromebooks on the bus or phones on the bus doing whatever. And my kids only ride the bus 12 minutes a day, each way, so 24 minutes a day. And the amount of stuff that they see with other kids in their technology, when they come home and, we're talking about like, hey, what's going on? And they say, well, so-and-so was doing this and so-and-so was doing that. And we're like, yes, this is why we don't do this, because it makes a difference, in how so-and-so doing, with their social relationships, and how are they doing in school. And, when our kids don't understand why other kids are doing what they're doing, you know what I mean? It kind of helps them to see as they get older that there's a reason behind the madness. So on the next slide, just some examples of things that our kids love doing. Our kids are outside all the time, as much as they can. Gosh, the other day when we had our snow day, was it Friday or was it Saturday? Friday. I mean, they were outside by themselves. I mean, the 3-year-old, like, we've gotten to the point where they can just go. They've got things that they can do. They've got forts outside. They go create things. Olivia really likes puzzles. She was super excited. She got a new pair of Carhartts for Christmas. That was a big deal. She needed new Carhartts and new boots so she can go work. The boys out with the chainsaw, cutting down trees. If we're out doing things, the kids are with us. There's not a lot. It gets exhausting. There's not a lot of me time. We don't just check out and let the kids go do their thing. The kids are a part of everything that we do, and all those conversations happen on a daily basis. Like, that made me so sad to see that statistic, that 37 minutes a day of family time. That's, it's every meal, it's cooking, it's including them in the everything that you do. Legos, they love games. Like I said, lots of reading. I don't know, some of the games, they love chess, okay? They love chess. I got Andy a chess set for his birthday, and little Isaac, Daddy, will you play me a round of chess? And he doesn't know what he's doing, but, it's okay. That's how you figure it out, and it's just that coming alongside and just including them in everything that you do. Olivia was baking bread this weekend and dessert, and just wants to just be a part and contribute. And that's just trying to get to their heart too, and just figure out, okay, how can we do things as a family, and serve each other, in the context of the family, and just be a part of things. So I guess just be bored. You don't have something to do? All right, go find something. It's not our job to entertain them. Go find something. You got a million things to do here. And sometimes the best thing that happens, I know as a mom, at least for me, the stuff can get overwhelming. Moms and grandmas and grandpas, I love you guys, but it's, my mom loves to buy things because, it looks fun. It looks like it'd be really good. And it is until they get stuff from aunt and uncle and other grandma and everybody else. So sometimes going through the house and just collecting stuff and taking it away so that it's paralysis by analysis. There's so many things to choose and do, and separating that stuff out so they can just have the things that they love and really spend time with, and rotate some things so that they always have something that they can create with. So creating their own fun is as much of it as anything. So anything else?
I think that is all. It's just, I would just say also, when you're involved with your kids, as you know, it's hard. The less I'm involved in technology, the closer I feel with my kids, and the more I do that, the more I do know I'm doing what I'm supposed to be doing spiritually. I feel better in that regard. So that's all. Thank you.
Awesome. Thank you, guys. All right, so awesome. So obviously Macmillan's great resource. Thank you guys for sharing all that. Hopefully you got something from it. I would also recommend Miss Bobby Thompson. She is an educated educator, and she has a lot of great ideas. She was sharing a bunch with me, and I couldn't share them all with you today, but talk to Miss Bobby. She's part of the Kids First team. But let me just hit a few things here before we dismiss, okay? So Andy touched on it, though. There are, or maybe both of them, I think, Danielle even. There's benefits of boredom, okay? It forces them to do some stuff. One of my favorite quotes comes from a comedian that I cannot endorse, so I will not share his name. But he says, "I'm bored" is a useless thing to say. I mean, you live in a great big vast world that you've seen none percent of. Even the inside of your own mind is endless, and it goes on forever, inwardly. Do you understand? The fact that you're alive is amazing, so you don't get to say, "I'm bored," okay? Boredom is not bad, all right? It's good for kids. So just some things, some alternatives then to do with your kids, and they touched on a lot of them, and I gave you all an appendix with some things to read with your kids or for your kids to read if they're old enough, and some work that they should be capable of doing at a certain age, and then some fun that you can have with your kids. And so there's a list there. Now, I had someone type these up for me, and they come from a volume of books that we'll share next week. So I haven't read every book. I haven't, so do your own work on it. Do your own investigation on whether or not it's good for your family. Just because it's on the list, don't assume that everything's good to go there. Okay. I did notice that one of the books that's on there, and then I was reading an article this week, and it's been banned from schools, and so I'm not totally sure why. So I'm like, oh, I think I saw that one on the list. We'll have to check that. So, anyways, just check. All right, just be a parent, please. All right. But the one thing that you can do with your kids is read. Again, that's a generative activity. We talked about how tech weakens our brain. Reading strengthens our brain in a lot of different ways with discernment, logic, reasoning, vocabulary, patience, all of those things. There's some steps there to raising a reader. The biggest thing you can probably do is what Macmillan's mentioned, which was to read out loud to your kids. Be an example. Let them see you reading. Train for it, okay? So if you wouldn't just jump into a marathon without doing some training and working your way up to that ungodly amount of distance that you have to run, okay? Same thing with reading. If your kids don't, if they're overexposed to tech and their patience is limited, start small and work your way up to longer books, chapter books, those types of things. Build a home library is one. Make books available around the house. It is an investment, but it's one worth making. And buy the best. Not all books are created equal. They mentioned that as well. Encourage independent reading. So there's a thing called sustained silent reading, SSR. The amount of minutes the students spent in SSR was directly linked to their academic achievement. So encourage reading alone, but also read out loud as a family. Just a couple other tips is, put them to bed and treat it as something that's exciting. Before you go to turn off the light, say, wait a second, if you want, you don't have to, but if you want, you can stay up the next 15 minutes and read this book before I turn the light off. Do you want to do that? Or you just want to go to bed, right? And then, it's something like, oh, I get to stay up later. Heck yeah, I'll read, or at least look at the pages or something. But that's one way to kind of trick them into it. One thing that I tried, that I just started, is paying Emma. So it's basically a penny a page for a chapter book. And so however many pages are in that book, once she finishes that book, I'll give her, basically a penny a page. So she just finished The One and Only Ivan, and that's 300 pages. So she made $3, okay? That was the first one. We'll see how it goes from here. But just encouraging her to read, give her some incentive. It's a small investment on my part. But read the Bible with your kids. Read out loud. Kids' Bibles are great. Those are great to get the stories, but read the actual Bible, the family Bible. Kids don't have to be able to read to get it. We know from Romans 10 that faith cometh by what? Hearing, not reading, by hearing. Okay? So let them hear the Word of God in your family, or in your home. And the other thing you can do is put them to work. So chores, they contribute to the family. It builds responsibility. It develops life skills for them. Let them create stuff, arts and crafts, cooking. Play is a big thing, and that's where, let them be bored because they'll learn how to occupy themselves. Christine Mraz, author of Purposeful Play, cites these interesting statistics about the advantages of play in a child's life. The MacArthur Foundation Genius Grant winners are twice as likely to win the grant if they spent more time playing. NASA applications ask how you played as a child. Murderers statistically have an absence of play in their childhoods. If for no other reason, parents, let your kids play so they don't become a murderer. There's reduced risk of violence in a person who spent time playing as a child. Family game night, let them get out in nature. Kids today suffer from what author Richard Louv calls a nature deficit disorder. God's creation is something worth just being in, so get out there. And really, that's their natural habitat, right? So much like an animal that's been caged all of its life, you release it back into the wild, it's not going to know how to survive on its own. It's going to end up dying because it's been kept from its natural habitat. Let kids grow up in their natural habitat with nature, with play. Let them scrape their knees. Let them figure out how to interact with other kids and be awkward. The cyber world is not where kids should grow up. That's not their natural habitat, right? The real world is, okay? Don't forget that the first man and woman were created in a garden. I believe it's in us. The biggest thing that you can do, and Wayne talked on this or mentioned this, is just talk to your kids. Okay, this is going to be the most effective way to manage any kind of influence in your kids' lives. I'm going to try to skip the stuff that's written on your page there, but talk to your kids about technology. Talk to your kids about sex. We talked about having those conversations. The thing that I can recommend the most is start that conversation early, okay? Now, you don't have to get into all the nitty-gritty graphic details, right? But at a young age, you start teaching a kid about their body and how it's their own, and you don't have to get too far, but you begin that conversation, they begin to develop an understanding of what their bodies are meant for, God's design for them. As they mature, you have more and more, mature conversations with kids. And then Josh mentioned you want to be their source of information. So when the time comes that they're confronted with the perversion of the world and their views of sex or whatever, you know what? They're not going to Google it. They're not going to ask their friends. You want them to come to you and talk to you about it. So that happens only by starting the conversation early and continuing that conversation. So you only have one conversation with your kids, but it starts at an early age and it continues until they're an adult, okay? Be honest about the good and the bad. Teach them their choices have long-term implications. Help them connect the dots, right? They don't always see down the road like parents do. You have experience, you have wisdom. Kids do not, all right? Help them connect the dots with the decisions they make today with the outcomes of tomorrow. I believe that boundaries and limits are helpful and needed for our kids, but externally imposed limits don't carry the power of internally owned values, okay? So you can do all the parental controls. We'll talk about third-party apps next week, some other things to help you with that. We'll talk about a bunch of different resources. But if you can get your kid to own those same values as you, that's going to be their greatest defense against the influence of technology and media, okay? Those values are passed on and created in your kids by talking to them. We saw this verse a couple weeks ago, or this passage a couple weeks ago, but Deuteronomy 6, it's talking about how we're supposed to teach these words to our children, God's word to our kids. Look at verse 7. Thou shalt teach them diligently unto thy children, and thou shalt talk of them. Okay? Sometimes we think teaching is we have to have all these points and all this understanding and lay it all out to them. Just talk to them. Talk of them. When you sit in your house, when you walk in the way, when you lie down, when you rise up, right? Just talk to them. Mealtime, drive time, whatever. All right? So technology has this role in our lives, and we have to be intentional about how we use it if we're going to mitigate the effects of it, okay? And it has a proper place. And so let me just end with this quote, and then we'll be dismissed. I'm sorry, we went way late. But this is from TechWise Family by Andy Crouch. Technology is in its proper place when it helps us bond with real people we have been given to love. It's out of its proper place when we end up bonding with people at a distance, like celebrities whom we will never meet. Technology is in its proper place when it starts great conversations. It's out of its proper place when it prevents us from talking and listening to one another. Technology is in its proper place when it helps us take care of the fragile bodies we inhabit. It's out of its proper place when it promises to help us escape the limits of vulnerabilities of those bodies altogether. Technology is in its proper place when it helps us acquire skill and mastery of domains that are the glory of human culture. Sports, music, arts, cooking, writing, accounting, the list could go on and on. When we let technology replace the development of skill with passive consumption, something has gone wrong. Technology is in its proper place when it helps us to cultivate all for the created world we are a part of and responsible for stewarding. He mentions the BBC series Planet Earth. That's a really good series. It's out of its proper place when it keeps us from engaging the wild and wonderful natural world with all our senses. Technology is in its proper place only when we use it with the intention and care. It's there. If there's one thing I've discovered about technology, it's that it doesn't stay in its proper place on its own. Much like children's toys and stuffed creatures and minor treasures, it finds its way underfoot all over the house and all over our lives. If we aren't intentional and careful, we'll end up with a quite extraordinary mess. All right? So hopefully the tips and the alternatives helped you today. Talk to those people. Talk to us. There's the list could go on and on. Reference that appendix that I gave you. But thank you guys. Let me pray and we'll be dismissed.